Greetings, truth seekers, paradigm busters, new world orders, civil disobedience, freedom fighters, free thinkers, higher mammals, good people of all types. How's it going? My name is Michael Parker. Welcome to the Electric Pyramid. This is episode 22, coming to you as always from an undisclosed location somewhere in the heart of deep, dark Hollywood, California. And ladies and gentlemen, it is a full moon. It is a Taurus moon in the sign of Scorpio. And like I said before, I'm a Scorpio. This is my time. Do you feel the Scorpio intensity? Scorpio is about the truth. It's about getting under the surface of things. It's about getting to the core meaning of everything, seeing beyond the veil, seeing through the nonsense to the true core of the matter. And that is what is happening right now. I love Scorpio. I love this time of year. I love fall. I've said that before. And depending on where you are, it is either November 6th or November 7th. And my good friend Joe Kiernan, who's on the East Coast, it is in fact November 7th.
It is.
Good evening, Joe.
I am. Good evening. I once again am doing the show from the future on a full moon.
You know what? We have we're on different timelines.
Yeah. It's wild when we do the show. It's always considered midnight here, so yeah. It's Friday for me, and all too often we've been having shows on some profound celestial days, and I'm enjoying it. The moon tonight is strong here. It's a beautiful clear night, strong reflection. It's a absolutely gorgeous evening here.
I take that as a good omen. I was thinking about this because. Yeah, when you mentioned that earlier today, I was like, wow, he's right. We have had several auspicious moons
we
on
got
different shows.
Tonight, I think last week was Halloween. I think the night, right. the one before that, it was a solar eclipse.
Was a
maybe
new moon,
a full moon right before that, possibly.
Yeah, on October 8th, we had a full moon as well. And you know what? Frankly, I think if you and I were women, we'd be cycling together. By this time, I mean,
right on.
It's nature takes its course, but yeah, it's true. That was a good point. I was like, you're right. So I've got to take that as a good omen. And ladies and gentlemen, if you're listening to this and you're up at this hour experiencing these lunar vibes with Joe and I thank you because I know that I know you might get tired and you could go to bed, but I ask that you don't and just stay glued to the internet because that's where we are.
Just be aware. Just pay attention.
Be aware. Pay attention.
It's a strong moon tonight, man. I'm really enjoying it. Good energies here.
Yeah, I was listening to an astrologer earlier today, and she was talking about the whole idea of the fact that it is a Taurus full moon in Scorpio, and if you follow astrology, and you look at the astrological wheel, Scorpio and Taurus are exactly opposite of each other. And Scorpio is a water sign. Taurus is an earth sign. And they actually go together very well. My oldest daughter is a Taurus. Earth signs and water signs in general work well together. So Scorpio is intense and deep. Taurus is earthy and sensual, but it can relate to the serious nature of Scorpio and vice versa. Scorpio can enjoy the sensual, earthy, true kind of experiences of the tactile, so to speak, that Taurus is all about. So they're two signs that work well together. They blend well together. So yeah, I think this is a good full moon.
I'm digging it.
Yeah. And I wanted to say to the audience, tonight we do not have a guest, but I've got several subjects that I want to talk to Joe about. And if you guys want to call in and throw your 2 cents or $200 or $2 million, whatever it is, into the conversation, we'd be glad to hear from you. Or if you want to jump in the chat room, I'm actually in the chat room right now as well. And so yeah, if you guys want
we have a direct line. If you want to call us directly, the number is 843-491-6077. If you want to give us a call direct,
we would love to hear from you. And yeah, once again, that's 843-491-6077. And one of the first things that I wanted to talk about tonight, and the truth of the matter is, sometimes I work in reality television, and I have been on television and I've been behind the scenes, and sometimes that's how I make my bread and butter. And so a story popped up. I guess I first heard about this yesterday. By now, you may have heard about it as well. But Discovery has a special coming on the first week of December. And Joe, it's called Eaten Alive.
Interesting title.
Yeah. Eaten Alive. And right off the bat, I mean, those two words will get your attention.
Well, well, you're absolutely right. It just reminded me of a story. Someone threw a story out to me that they were working on. It was a little sketch comedy, and it was about a cowboy in the adult industry, and he was a singer, and it was titled Girth Brooks. And I just said, "There's, that really gets your attention too." I said I'd go with that story. It sounds fantastic.
Yeah, I mean,
so Eaten Alive could really, you got my attention there, man.
Right, and I get the Girth Brooks thing certainly. We won't get into that. This is, I doubt this is a family show, but anyway,
people of all kinds out there, I tell you,
absolutely, of all stripes and all shapes and forms, and God bless them.
Yes, sir.
I mean, here where I live, the adult industry supposedly exists and thrives, but I'll be honest, I don't see it. I mean, I know, I'm here in the so-called Valley here in Los Angeles, where a lot of this stuff is supposedly made. But I take that back. Right off the 101, you see the Vivid building, and Vivid is a large pornography company, very successful. But I mean, that's as close as I don't certainly see it. But anyway, let me get back to this original thing. So Discovery.
I'm dying to hear this here.
Yeah. So Discovery, now I've worked for Discovery before, and I've got mixed feelings about Discovery, I'll be honest. The first TV gig I ever got was to host a show for Discovery that was going to be called Scared Nation. And this was back the end of 2008, early 2009. And at the time, Discovery and I had been talking about perhaps trying to do something. And I was hoping that something would happen. I didn't know if it would. And finally, Donald Toms, who was the head of talent development over there, called me up one day and he said, "Listen, there's this show that we're looking at doing, and we think you might be a good match for hosting it. It's called Scared Nation. We want you to meet the people." Long story short, I do meet them. We like each other. Everything's great. And this show is going to be kind of a paranormal show in which found material like a YouTube video or things of this nature, we would investigate them and see if there was anything to be any facts that could be discerned about these stories, these videos, these photographs, these recordings, trace elements, whatever that people would have of these paranormal events. And I was all over it, and I was like very excited. We spent 8 months on it, and the executive producer who had kind of inherited the show. Frankly, I don't think he liked the show from the get-go. And finally, he put the can on it about 8 months into it. So it never even aired. But interestingly enough, shortly thereafter, several shows that had the same exact concept came out on Sci-Fi Channel, another channel. Anyway, so my experience with Discovery from all that was not, I was not that impressed. And I've since heard other stories about dealing with Discovery that, but listen, at the same time, most companies, you're going to hear stories of positive and negative.
And the last show the one I was most recently involved with here, that originally began as Discovery also.
That's right.
Yeah. And I don't know what it ended up being. I mean, I know it was on several different networks, but they did have the same parent company, but
yes, I think they put that on Animal Planet. I think they put you guys on American Heroes, which used to be their Discovery Military Channel.
Yeah, that was I wasn't expecting that one.
Right.
But I saw it on Sci-Fi as well. There was a couple of them.
Well, I'll tell you what, that worked out well because you guys and Mike Barr, and Daryl Sims, all good guys. I mean, you guys got a good thing out of that because that ended up airing quite a few times. So that was positive.
Absolutely. And like the guys you just mentioned, the great guys. Had a great time. And I hope they make more of them. To be honest with you.
You know what? I think they probably will.
Yeah.
Listen, they ran those shows so often that I've got to assume that they were successful on some level because you wouldn't just keep running them if people weren't watching them. I wouldn't think. I mean, listen, it's good to have a catalog of shows that you can keep going back to the well, but if people aren't watching them, then it doesn't really do you any good because the advertisers are going to want to look at the numbers and the traffic that you're getting, and if it's not there, then why would I want to advertise? And then why would the network want to put the show out? So, so anyway, back to Discovery. So I read this last night, and essentially what this show is about. There's this guy who I was not familiar with. His name is Paul Rosalie. And in this show called Eaten Alive, which is going to be on Discovery on December 7th, he is going to allow himself to be eaten by an anaconda.
The living anaconda.
Yes. And,
how many questions am I allowed to have?
As many as I think the more questions, the better. Because, this is all the questions that you're probably thinking are probably all relevant.
Okay. Well, like my first one is really not even so much about the snake. Okay, I'm with you. Live snake. But how big is this dude?
See, that's the deal.
Is he on his spare time, is he a horse jockey? Is he a little fella?
No. So I was looking into this guy today, and I went on his website, I went on his Twitter account, and you know what? I mean, I got to say, this guy looks, he looks kind of ripped. Actually, he looks like a jock, and he's a young dude. He's late 20s. I think one of the bios I saw, I think he's like 26, and he looks like a tough guy. I mean, he's got some muscles. He is definitely not an equestrian rider.
He's a jock and not a jockey.
Yeah, exactly. He's a big guy. So, right. But the question that you pose is relevant because, I
mean, now we're talking about a large, very large anaconda.
Yes.
Because we're talking a grown man here.
Yes.
Wow. So they have it in captivity, and is he going to fully consume the man? At what point does this stop? Because
exactly.
I was under the impression an anaconda crushed and killed first.
See, now we're talking. Joe, that is a great question because I thought that most of these types
stopped, and
I thought that most of these large constricting type snakes, that was their whole thing, is they would asphyxiate you by crushing you to death, and then they would consume you.
Interesting.
So that there's a lot of questions that are not being answered, but here's some of just my mini thoughts about this, like yours. First of all, yes, just at what point do you decide, you know what, here's the deal? And supposedly this guy is a naturalist. He's a young man who's always been, he considers himself kind of following the path of like Jane Goodall. I think that's who he claims to be one of his heroes. So he's supposedly this naturalist, and he's spent a lot of time in the jungle. I mean, at first when I just saw it last night, I was just flabbergasted, and immediately,
it's good advertising because now I want to watch the show. Because there's so many questions.
Of course.
Like being a naturalist, like when you told me what being eaten alive was going to be, I took it more as a David Blaine sort of thing.
Of course, you know what? That's exactly what I thought. Because and listen, that there are a lot of people who think that exact thing.
Okay.
And
I'm not alone. Yeah. Okay.
All right. No. That's
because
exactly
I'm thinking, who else would want to do this? You know?
Well, the first thing that I saw when I saw it was like, you know what? I don't think I can compete with that.
Right.
You know, it's like I don't know what kind of shows I could be pitching at this point. Because I frankly, you know what, Joe, I'm really not up for being consumed by a large reptile.
Right. I've never thought of it, you know?
Well, that's the other thing.
It just says I got to work harder. I'd never thought of the anaconda bit.
Yeah. I mean,
oh man, I'm slipping.
Yeah, listen, showbiz is a tough gig, and it just gets tougher every day. And, you know, so this guy, I guess, first of all, though, if you're Discovery and you hear the man is offering up himself to be eaten by the large reptile on camera, you are just all over that.
No doubt.
And, you know, I mean,
we are the camera guy right now.
Yeah, we're like minutes away from Running Man at this point. I mean, I don't know when it's going to happen, but it's got to happen at some point. And you know, this guy is offering to be consumed by this anaconda. So you know, part of me is very intrigued. Part of me loathes the idea. But today I started doing some more investigating into it. So here's the fallout that's happening. First of all, a lot of people were thinking, well, wait a minute. This has got to be a hoax. This can't even be real. But right. No, it is real, and you can go online and see the advertisement. For some reason, YouTube pulled the advertisement, but I believe the little video is still on his page, and I believe it's on Discovery's page. The man's name is Paul Rosalie, and that's Rosolie. And the show is called Eaten Alive. So here's what's happening. You know, people immediately think it's a hoax. Discovery's being kind of closed-mouthed about it, but it is not a hoax. Not closed-mouthed. The snake won't be, will he? Or she. Supposedly this thing is a real thing. It's a real show. And I watched the trailer for it today. So I'm thinking, you know, is this what we've come to get people to watch television? You know, you've got to offer yourself up to a snake.
I was thinking the same.
Yeah. And but this guy, he's claiming that he's doing it to bring attention to ecological issues. And he's claiming that, you know, he's not out to harm this animal. He's actually trying to bring attention to the damage that we're doing to rainforests, jungles, our environment, and how it's even affecting apex predators like these giant snakes. Now, that's all well and good. However, it still reeks of a publicity stunt. It still feels like David Blaine. It still makes you wonder where
I'm just missing how he feels this is going to, help out the rainforest and bring attention. I mean, it's bringing attention to an animal from the rainforest, no doubt,
and bringing attention to him.
Oh yeah, no doubt. You know what? I was able to pull up a picture here, and I see the man holding a large snake.
Yes,
that is a big snake, man.
Absolutely. Here's the deal.
Is a very large snake.
Here's the deal. I give the guy props on being committed to this idea, and if you watch the trailer, you end up seeing at one point, and I don't know if this is the snake that they're going to use, but I wouldn't doubt that it is. Bro, this snake, I swear to God, there's like 6 or 8 people carrying this big snake. And here's the deal. He's a decent sized guy. I'm going to guess he's between 5'7" and 6'2", okay, and not skinny. I mean, he looks fit.
I mean, I see some meat on his arms with him manhandling this giant lizard.
He looks like G.I. Joe.
Right, like this, I cannot even believe that he's even near this thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just looking at a part of the snake. I was like, I think I could get in there.
Yeah, this guy has got stones, man. I mean, at one point in the trailer, you see him in this, like, he's got this little rubber dinghy, like that that you would
like
probably
Garth Brooks or both.
not like Girth Brooks, but more like something that you would get on to avoid a sinking ship or something. So he's got this tiny dinghy.
Okay.
And it's dark and he's in the water. But what's weird about it, he's not in the inflatable. He's dragging it with one arm and he's got like a giant machete in the other hand, and it's nighttime. I mean, this guy is in the jungle in water up to his chest at night. I mean, obviously the guy is an adrenaline junkie, it seems to me like. So here's where
set land speed records. If I saw this thing laying around, this snake he's holding, if I came around somewhere in the forest and I saw that, I mean, wow, Joe, I would run like a mile before I looked back,
Joe, I'm slightly embarrassed to admit this, but today myself and my youngest daughter walked up to the front of the house after returning to pick her up from school. Mm-hmm. And there was like a 9-inch wood lizard right on my front door, and it threw me for a second, okay. And I was like, whoa. And, I shoot him off. But I mean, wood lizards, 20-foot anaconda.
Right.
I don't like to feel them. I don't really want to be around them. And so this guy, he's going to do this. So the next question you say, well, wait a minute. Okay, so if this is not a hoax and this is in fact real, and this man is going to be eaten by this snake, how in the world could that even happen? So apparently they have created some kind of suit that he is going to wear. And you see it in the trailer.
Okay.
He's going to wear this supposedly snake-proof suit, which to me looked a bit like a cross between an old scuba diving outfit and kind of a suit of armor. It looks odd. But that then brings us back to your original question. Well, wait a minute. How big a snake does it take to be able to not only swallow this man, but then to swallow a man with this kind of gear on? And at what point, his final words in the trailer, Joe, you got to go head first.
Well, I mean, I know that's normal. Yeah. But I mean, like, is he making a full passage?
Okay, so here's all relevant, and yes, these are the types of questions that, So supposedly, this Paul Rosalie character, he's going to be in this created suit that you see him breathe just for a second at the end of the trailer, and he says that he's covering himself in pig's blood so that he will be as appealing as possible to the snake.
Okay.
And then one bit of footage that I saw is he's kind of on his knees, kneeling around this snake. Now, you've got to get the snake to want to eat you, right?
I don't think so, yeah.
Yeah. And
of course. What else would you do?
And so he's got to be appealing to the snake. Now, the thing about these types of snakes is they eat very rarely. And they can go for long periods of time without eating. And by the time that they finally eat, a lot of times the snake is kind of on the weak side.
Right.
Because they go so long without meals. And then that's when you see a snake with like a goat inside them or something. So you see this long snake with like this big ball right in the middle. Right. And so immediately PETA, the people that are for the protection of animals, come out today saying, oh my God, are you kidding me? This is terrible. Discovery, what are you doing? You need to pull this right now. If this isn't a hoax, then you better not show it because this is just terrible. Because their point brings us back to your original point, which is like, look, a snake, even these big anacondas, their argument was like, we don't think that the snake should be able to physically take this man in.
Right. I mean, because we also see, with the goat and the big bulge, but I mean, I've also seen and heard reports. I mean, obviously I don't follow up for the validity, but where they tear open at times too from
that's right
too fierce too large of a kill.
You're exactly right. And there was some footage or some photos just a few years ago where one of these snakes, and I don't remember if it was an anaconda or a python or what, but it had eaten a large alligator, and the gator was too big for it, and so the animal had ruptured. So PETA immediately was saying,
I can't believe any snake takes an alligator, a gator of any size. You know,
I know.
They're fighters. My goodness,
it's unbelievable. So the guy has had to fight back on his Twitter, and he's saying, listen, he goes, if you know anything about me, if you've read my book, the last thing that I want to do is harm an animal. And I can't tell you what's going to happen in the show, but I can tell you that the snake lived. And another thing I've got to throw in here, besides the fact
lived.
The snake lived.
My comment is the snake lived, okay?
And so one thing I also have to throw in is, so he's going to wear this crazy snake proof suit, and he says you got to go head first. But apparently there's also going to be a rope around him.
Okay, all right.
So that they can retrieve him.
The old string on the dollar at the soda machine trick from back in the day. Okay, I got it. I'm catching on here.
It's unbelievable. And so this guy,
beautiful.
Yeah, he's gonna let an anaconda supposedly swallow him, and I guess they're gonna pull him out, and we're gonna all watch it on television.
This is fantastic. Yeah,
it's just in time for the Christmas season.
Oh man, yeah. Let's see, December 7th, is it?
Holiday. Hey, listen, it's a holiday special, Joe.
I hope it follows the lighting of the Rockefeller Center Christmas tree.
Would be fitting, right?
It sounds like a new annual holiday thing. Yeah.
Oh my God, man eaten by giant snakes. Ladies and gentlemen, this is real. I'm not making this up. Just go to Paul.
We're going to talk more about this another day.
Yeah. We will see what happens at this point.
And we're going to try to get him on the show or the snake. One or the other.
Bro, I almost, well, you know what? I'm going to have to follow the guy on Twitter, because today I was like, you know what? He's only got like 2,000 plus.
Let's make
Twitter
a push for it. I'm going to go for him.
Yeah. We need to get this guy on
All right,
the radio.
I'm on it.
And because it's weird. At first, I had a very negative, incredulous feeling to the whole thing. I'm still not completely copacetic with it.
I'm very convinced on, we were, as you were getting into, it's feeding, that if it doesn't want to eat it, it's not going to eat it. And I honestly thought that they were, of course they bite, but I thought they were a constrict and kill snake, where I thought they used their weight and constricting strength till our heartbeat stopped. So there wasn't, but I'm not a reptile. I'm not a
herpetologist.
Yes, I'm not. Well, I'm from New York. We don't have any. We have turtles.
Oh, I've got something for you.
But, we got them here, but I'm not too familiar with what's what.
Well, we've got an amphibian New York story coming up shortly, so keep that thought. What was I going to say about this snake thing?
He's a big guy, man.
He's a big guy. Okay. Having worked in television and worked in reality television, I have a hunch that, listen, something's not going to play out on this deal.
Well, okay, from film industry period.
Yeah.
How do you set up to film this? You know what I mean? How do you, never mind the lighting and all of that, but we're talking about, is it going to eat him today? How long is he in this suit every day for how long?
Yeah, and your crew
for how long?
And your crew is there. And here's the deal. Listen, that snake, I'm assuming,
better be a good actor,
Yeah, you got to bring that snake.
Yeah,
to
like
the
Bart
guy.
the Bear, he better deliver.
Yeah.
Jeez,
Peter.
Like I said, we're gonna get him or the snake on the show. The snake lived, man.
We'll get some.
He's got something to say about it, I assure you.
The snake's probably not
why
happy.
do I have to eat this astronaut-looking guy?
And he does look like an astronaut.
Already. Starving.
Yeah. I just wanted a goat or a spider monkey. I didn't sign up for this.
What is this? It's not even a human.
Yeah. So I don't know.
I'm on it. I can't wait to see this.
the whole reality TV game just went up. You know, I mean,
What's
just went up
next? Three
big time.
days in the whale?
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. I mean,
this idea, folks.
And you know what? I think the 3 days in a whale is an easier gig than being taken in by the anaconda.
You know what? That's a battle I'd like to see on TV.
Absolutely. Listen, the whale has got enough size that, you know, you put on some scuba gear, I can kind of see it. Inside a snake, I'm already claustrophobic in elevators. I just can't.
Right. Like I see it being a very tight fit the entire time.
Whew.
Yeah. But even if we do the old soda machine trick,
yeah,
like I just don't see it being good for the snake. Like I just don't see him saying like, hey, you know what, it wasn't that bad, you know? Like I don't see it being that good. I see Peter's argument.
Absolutely.
I'm pretty sure, you know, PETA's not in the rainforest. That's how he could get away with it. But again, now we come back to it's not in a studio. He's on site, right?
And this is already shot. So whatever.
I'm interested to see how this played out because this is a very demanding task for a snake. You know.
To say the least. And I'm wondering if, you know, he's saying you got to go head first. I'm going to make a little prediction. I'm going to guess that the snake, he finally gets the snake to bite on his head or something. And it's like the head in the alligator trick, you know.
You shake the heck out of him.
Yeah, well, I can't.
Like Joe Dirt?
Listen, if he gets in there even past his shoulders, that will be mind blowing. And I just have a feeling that something's not going to pan out, or that the snake is going to be so freaked out that finally the guy like has to shove his arm down his throat or something. You know,
Yeah, you know what? I'm with you. I'm hoping for a disaster.
Yeah,
you know?
I'm pulling for the snake.
Right. I hope the snake does not follow script. Yeah. I'm betting on that guy.
Well, think about this.
Trust him. He's fork-tongued, you know.
Oh my God! And here's the deal. I hate
turn on you.
I hate to be speculative, and this guy might be the most well-meaning person. I don't know him. Never heard of him until today. But the Scorpio psychologist in me has to also think that, wow, does this guy have a snake thing? Because, I mean, listen, it's like, it is such a unimaginable, incomprehensible stunt to pull. You know, it's one thing to jump a motorcycle over a car. Mm-hmm. It's entirely another to say, hey, you know what? I think I'm going to be swallowed by this anaconda.
And you know someone else was there and said, great idea. You know what I mean?
That was on the tip of my tongue. Great idea. You know, yeah.
Because it's kind of hard to just go around and convince people, you know?
Yeah.
It's nice, like, fantastic.
Brilliant. So
I'm going to pay you for it, too.
Here's another thing that I think may happen that I think's a little weird. They talk several times about a female snake. And I think that he's shown with a female snake, which I don't know, for some reason, it just even gets weirder to me.
You know what? You just did make it a little weirder.
Exactly. It's just strange and creepy. And hey, you know what? I'll be there with the kids. We'll be watching it.
No doubt about it.
Hey, kids, the man that's going to be eaten by the snake is on. You better hurry. Football's over. Let's get it. You know. So anyway, Discovery, you have raised the bar or lowered the bar. We haven't decided. And Paul Rosalie, we wish you the best of luck. Whatever's happened has already happened. We'll have to wait and see.
I'm with the snake. You know, he's got a voice too.
That's right. And what do you do after that? What do you do for an encore?
Oh man, the whale. You know, you got to go big, dude.
See, for some reason, the whale is just a nicer creature to me.
Take a ride on a California condor or something.
Ooh, man, I don't know. So we'll have to wait and see. I'll let that go for the moment, but yeah, that's where we are in the late part of 2014 for popular culture. Man eaten by reptile.
It is pop culture,
and so yeah, and just in time for the Christmas season. So another thing that happened on a slightly you know what? Before I get to the heavy stuff, let me go off on a bit of a rant for a moment. A few weeks ago, we had Norio Hayakawa on the show, and we discussed Area 51. And I like Norio a lot, and I agree with a lot of what he says. I was very pleased that he came on the show. I agreed with a lot of what he said about Area 51. I don't agree with everybody all the time, but much of what he said about Area 51 and Dulce, I tended to agree with. Shortly after that show, he announced on Facebook and in social media that he was retiring from the UFO field. And Norio, has been around the field for 30 plus years, maybe more. And he was basically saying that, you know what, I'm retiring from ufology. I've been doing this since the 60s, and I have really come up with nothing to support the extraterrestrial hypothesis. That doesn't mean, I think I'm about to sneeze, ladies and gentlemen. If I sneeze, just bear with me. Even though I have found no evidence to back up the extraterrestrial hypothesis, and it seems to, and I'm kind of paraphrasing what he said. He goes, I'm not saying that this quest has not been worth it. I've met a lot of interesting people, and I've learned a lot about humanity, but I'm pretty certain that the whole ET flying saucer thing is not real, and I am retiring. So
it's an interesting last statement for a career.
Well, it wasn't his last statement, as it turns out. And other people have said this. And listen, I still like Norio, and I still agree with a lot of what he has to say.
Great man.
Yeah, but since then, he's posted a lot of stories.
Very interesting.
Let's put it this way: if he retired from ufology, it certainly doesn't seem that way,
right?
Because he's continuing to post stories. But now it's more stories backing up his claim that there is no credible evidence to the idea that ETs are visiting planet Earth. Okay, hey, you know what? I can respect that. I can respect both sides of the conversation. But here's my larger point that I wanted to make. There's been a lot of talk, and this goes in cycles. There's been a lot of talk that ufology is dying, and that we're kind of in the badlands of ufology. Nothing really seems to be happening. Time goes on. There is less credible evidence. Not that abductions are good by any means, but where's the abductee phenomena? Where is anything? Where's the trace elements? Where are the good cases?
Mm-hmm.
And on one hand, I understand that. And I've been at this game a long time myself. And listen, I'm not going to say that I am any type. Well, several people have pointed out to me before, that they hate the term UFO expert because it seems like such a flaky thing. And I kind of agree with that as well. And a lot of skeptics will say, listen, how can you be a UFO expert? Nobody even knows if they probably don't even exist. So the thing that bugs me.
Also a valid argument by that.
Of course.
By that, yeah. I mean, especially if you're self-proclaimed expert. I mean, that's even.
Yeah, and that's
more
why.
Removed, yeah.
when that show that I was on, they wanted to call me UFO expert, and I think they ultimately did. And I said, I'm really not comfortable with that. I'd rather just be called a researcher or something because
but they like the word expert.
Of course, no, and that was exactly what they said, and that's what they called me. And some of my friends got a kick out of that. But back to the issue at hand, which is one thing that bugs me, and I see it a lot. Within the UFO field, you have people on one side who seem to just believe every single UFO story that comes down the pike. And for myself, there have been times when I would be really into my research early on because, listen, I've been into it since I was a kid, but probably 15 years ago, I got much deeper into it and started spending more time looking into it even more. And all of a sudden, the internet pops up and there's all this additional information that's suddenly available at any time of day. You don't have to go to the library anymore. Well, guess what? Along with that comes a lot of, sensationalized stories and a lot of information that you really can't vet. It's just out there. But the excited, enthusiastic part of you kind of wants to believe it. And listen, when I was doing the Dark Matter radio show in 2006, 2008, I had a lot of people on, and I don't wish them ill will by any means. But now when I go back and listen to that stuff or I see their current work, I'm kind of like, wow, you just are not coming across as being very critical because you're pretty much buying every story. I hate to name names. But there's something. No, it's this topic. The information is easily regurgitated in the sense that it's heard and repeated instantly, and there's very few. There's very little researching. It's when something's opinions are often stated as fact. I think is what I'm trying to say. Absolutely.
And it at times gets carried away, and then it's very difficult to find the lines to read between.
That's right. Well, some people, some researchers that I've interviewed in the past, they would come on and tell you stories that they had heard that there were meetings at the UN or there was this or we get the underground bases, with the Dracos or what have you. Listen. There is a huge mythology or wealth of stories that's out there. And the longer that I go on with this, the less impressed I am with that type of material. Then on the other hand, there are people within the ufology community, and I'm not picking on Norio when I say this because I believe in Norio's case, he has done the work. He's been in it a long time, and I believe that he sincerely kind of believes what he's saying. But there are other people within the UFO community who I believe are just kind of killjoys. They didn't find what they were looking for. They're super jaded, and now no information ever is good enough for them. And they will jump on the various threads of sites or
you nailed it, man. That's a big characteristic for sure.
And it bugs me. It's like, it's for me, I'm still taking it in. I don't often talk about it. I don't comment. I just take everything in, and then what's relevant I keep. What's not relevant or what I don't see as being credible, I just let it go. But I don't get into it. But I see there are some UFO researchers who it just seems like every time I see them say something, it's how certain they are that something's false or that something's not happening.
Absolutely.
That's fake or that person doesn't know what he's talking about. And
right. It's usually no gray area. It's black or white. It's this way or no other way possible.
And to me, 99% of it's a gray area, or maybe that's
of course, right.
It's like so right now I think that when people start talking about it's the death of ufology and we're all just this is just going to hell in a handbucket, I think part of it is these two sides of it. And there's a lot of infighting. So it's like, don't be that guy who just believes everything and then, talks about all of these wild and crazy ideas and stories without really digging hard. And then don't be that other guy who poo-poos or just disses or, makes fun of every single thing that comes out. Because I've seen both types of these people, and they really annoy me. And and quite frankly, I can't take either one of them seriously.
You know what I've been having a problem with lately? I don't get around to watching much TV.
Right.
However, I did watch a few, I guess, maybe a mini marathon of a popular Ancient Aliens. I'll just say. Mm-hmm. I have to admit, okay, nice program, informative, very interesting, draws people in. As a television program, fantastic, and I'm sure they do very well. But, I'm just getting, personally, from a fan of early masters and just early wisdom, I just, all too often, I'm seeing things that I'm saying, wow. I was talking about this not recently too, Michael, but just so many things that humans that lived before us, people who have put lifetimes of work looking into things and math equations and tools and spirals and, all of these things. It's like so many accomplishments are now given to aliens. It's right. Like, who could have done this? Aliens did it. I'm saying, well, that's, I can tell you a whole other way, but it's about humans doing it,
Yes.
It's just so many things. It's in this and this. Who else but aliens? I'm saying, wow, like you're just taking so much away. Hey, maybe they were there, dude. I don't know. But I could also show you how humans did it. They're like, those books still exist. Like, they'll tell you all about it. And there's no mention of an alien doing it.
Joe, you are dead on, and here's the deal. I like Ancient Aliens.
Yeah,
it's
man,
weird.
It's
I always seem to fall asleep.
Cool.
I always seem to fall asleep during it when I'm watching it. But
well, you know people on the show.
Yeah,
I know someone on the show, and I'm saying, how could you really think that? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
you
have a very nice degree, and I do not have that degree you have, but you can't really say that, can you? Do you really think that?
I lost you for a second. Sorry. No, Joe, you're exactly right. And here's the deal. I can tell you, unfortunately, that reality television, and listen, Ancient Aliens, ladies and gentlemen, it is still reality television. It's being posed as a documentary, but there are aspects of reality television that go into it, and not in the case that we're pitting one person against another.
No,
but we're asking people to go places and talk about things as if those are their real opinions. And unfortunately, television and the production company and the network is always going to want you to say the most outlandish thing that you've got.
It's so true, though.
And I'm with you.
That's why they wouldn't want someone like me, because they'll just, they say it's not that interesting that someone did that a few hundred years ago, John.
Now, here's the deal.
Tell me about the spaceship he was in.
Yeah, here's the deal. There are some undeniable, complete mysteries.
Oh, no doubt about it. Absolutely.
And those cannot be denied. I mean, there's those, I believe it's Olatombo. I believe it's in Peru.
A few. And I don't mind the interesting questions posed, like how else, and give examples on how, on such. But it had to have been aliens, like right. It's comments like that saying, like posing interesting questions, and that sometimes that can be very interesting in itself. You look into the info you have, and you can make suggestions and pose questions on what else. We've searched every avenue of what we know it could be, but it's just so many things.
Yeah, when you speak in absolutes, I'm black and white and absolutes. I'm not with you on that. And I enjoy the Ancient Aliens show. I started reading Von Daniken when I was probably in the 4th or 5th grade.
Wow, no kidding, man.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember reading Gold of the Gods in the 5th grade.
Wow.
Well, I was just really into it from the get go.
Right. No, but I mean, it's fantastic. Those books, you were able to find them, hear about them, and get them at an early age. That's all.
I was a bookworm, and so I've been on board with that idea for a long time. However, that being said, and I know that you and I have talked about this in the past. The other thing is that I feel like guys like Graham Hancock, that there's also, and maybe Michael Cremo, that there's also parts of our own human history that we just we don't have the goods right now. We don't know what actually preceded us in an accurate fashion. Right. I mean, the more that we go on, just in the last 15 to 20 years, there's been the discovery of Göbekli Tepe, which, turned things upside down. Then we've got Gunung Padang in Indonesia or Java, wherever it is. I mean, these are archaeological anomalies that pretty much,
they don't fit the history that we've been given.
Which leaves you with the only possibility, which is, we need to back things up.
Yeah.
We need, we don't have all of the answers, which is going to lead us into the second hour and back to New York City. But you're absolutely correct. And the downside of all of that on the ancient aliens thing is I hope that it doesn't poison the well too much. I know that they're about to start their new season. I think it maybe started last week. Giorgio has another show, In Search of Aliens, and
I haven't seen that yet.
Yeah, and last week we also talked about the whole idea where they're saying there's some ufologists that say that Nazi craft was what landed and crashed at Roswell or whatever. And I know they covered that in Giorgio's show. But my point is, it's like when you take things like this and it's just really pure speculation, you can't fault people for getting turned off. Some people will love it and they'll enjoy it, and some people will be able to take it as interesting food for thought.
It still is too.
It is.
It's still an entertaining show, and it's informative nonetheless. It really is. Absolutely.
It's inspiring. That's what I always like to say.
It is. It brings a lot of places and events to people's view that maybe they've never even heard of it before.
And hopefully they will look into those things. But then on the other hand,
absolutely,
all of the hardcore skeptics and non-believers just say, well, this is nonsense. And the first time, we ascribe something to aliens, which like yourself doesn't seem.
I'm not against it.
Right. I know.
But it's just, I feel I can make a much finer argument that it was a human in certain cases.
Of course. And I think even Giorgio said that, when they did the Bigfoot special, he was like, you know what? I think that he claimed that, at that point he nearly got fired from the job because he didn't want to do the Bigfoot special.
Right.
Aliens and the Bigfoot. And so my daughter and I watch it, and she was laughing.
Is that what it was? The aliens were the Bigfoots?
Well, I think they were basically saying that perhaps and a lot of people have said this before, that, Bigfoot, not only is it an extremely elusive, large primate.
I've heard it's quite elusive.
Yes, it seems like it is for something so large and supposedly stinks really bad and doesn't have a car or any known mode of transportation. But that not only is Bigfoot this elusive mammal, but also it might be interdimensional and perhaps even an extraterrestrial.
Of course.
Yeah. So
I mean, he can't. He doesn't have a car.
He doesn't have a car. You got to go whole hog. And so anyway, listen. Ladies and gentlemen, that's the music. We're going to take a break. We'll resume with the madness shortly.
Oh yeah.
Greetings, citizens of the Electric Pyramid. Thanks for joining us for our second hour. And tonight has been an unusual one. This is the 22nd episode. Look how far we've come. Look how big the little pyramid has grown in 22 weeks. So I just want to clarify something. In the last hour when Joe and I were talking, I'm not saying that the ancient alien hypothesis is incorrect. We got off on that thread, but it is an example of some of the things we're talking about. My point was that ufology is not dying. Regardless of what anyone says, inevitably events will continue to occur that will make people question things. Mysteries occur. Just today, Joe was hearing strange sounds within around his area where he lives. Some people have called those the Seneca guns in the past. Listen, things are going to continue to occur. Anomalies will continue to occur. Oh, yeah. My point is just we as people who are interested in the whole idea of UFOs, extraterrestrials, the extraterrestrial hypothesis, let's not get down on ourselves, and let's also not jump the shark here and just bite at every story of there being secret UN meetings about extraterrestrial ambassadors, or, worrying about when disclosure is going to happen or if it's not going to happen. That is a story that's been beaten to death. Several weeks ago, somebody had posted an article on Facebook, and it was something about extraterrestrials and DNA and, kind of the whole Sitchin concept that perhaps our DNA had been spliced by them. And I don't remember who had posted it, but they posted it and just immediately made fun of it. I was like, okay. Well, in my mind, I'm just like, well, why are you even bothering to post it if you're going to knock it? Or perhaps someone posted it, right, and then immediately somebody else jumped on it and knocked it, who's within the UFO field. So I just basically said, okay. I responded something to the effect like, why do you think this, or something? And they immediately started flaming me like, Parker, this is crazy. You can't possibly believe this. And it's like, my point was, it doesn't matter if I believe it or not. I'm asking you.
Right.
I'm asking you to explain your feeling on this particular thing, which you seem so incredibly certain is nonsense, when I'm pretty sure you really don't know.
Right.
Yeah. There's no way you could know. You can spin your wheels and talk all day and all night about this, that, and the other thing. But the fact of the matter is you don't know. And ladies and gentlemen, most of us do not know. So I'm just leaving room for that gigantic gray area that Joe and I were talking about before. Don't be super gullible. Don't believe every crazy story, but don't be the buzzkill either, and try to just squash every single thread of possibility, because I'm pretty damn sure you really don't know either. And so that's my whole thing on that. And as far as Norio Hayakawa goes, I really like the guy. I think that he's done some good work. And so, I wish him the best. And it's funny because somebody else had said, well, hey, it seems like these people say they're retiring from ufology and they never really retire. That could be true too. So I'm never going to say that I'm retiring from this. I have taken time away from it, and I don't speak about it as much as I used to, but it is something that I will probably be interested in for the rest of my life. Now, I think it's also healthy to have other interests in your life. And when people become too obsessed with a single subject, especially as outside an alternative as the ET hypothesis, it's probably good to, have a few other interests as well, just so you don't drive off the people in your life who, can't understand it at all. And listen, you're never going.
And your odds are you might not get that golden ticket answer you're working for, because we know there's a lot of dead end roads for information, for evidence, things like that in that field. It can be very frustrating. There's a lot of dead ends. And
Joe, you are so right.
And research, so there's a lack of gratification sometimes in the most dedicated work. So I'm sure it can be quite frustrating.
Great men have gone before us and spent their entire lives. Kehoe, I think about Hynek, guys like this. I mean, who really who laid the groundwork for a lot of this stuff. And, they didn't see it in in their lifetime. And the same will probably happen with us. I mean, I used to think that, disclosure was surely going to happen. Then I wised up and realized it's not really even in the best interest of the powers that be or the establishment or the system or whatever you want to call it to expose such a thing. And if I've said in the past that if disclosure did occur, I always thought that it would be by a third world country or by a country that is not a major superpower, because it really doesn't serve their interests in any way to call that question into the room. So, yeah, I don't know if that will ever happen. But I also don't spend a lot of time anymore worrying about it. So I think, like Joe said, if you're interested in this subject and you want to do the work, just realize the answers that you're looking for may never, ever come. And I would try to gently persuade people from making these absolute statements one way or the other about this at this point in time, because the farther that I go into this, the more that I realize, you know what, I don't know as much as I thought I knew.
And don't criticize what you don't understand.
Right? That's right. And so, if you're on one side or the other, I just back off a little bit. And and especially, listen, if you're one of the people within ufology who has really decided that this is all nonsense, then you know what, you should actually just get out of it entirely. Mm-hmm. And I'm not talking about Norio Hayakawa in this particular case, because I do feel like the man has put in a lot of work. But I've seen other people who are just kind of self-appointed authorities who take joy in knocking every single idea or every single story without having a lot of goods to back it up. And I think that's not really
blasphemy,
solving anything either.
Amen, brother.
So that's that. Hey, so another point as far as this is not about UFOs at all, but here's something I read this week that just gets to my larger point, which is, you know what? We are not as all-knowing as we'd like to think we are. And this gets back to New York City. So, Joe, check this out. Earlier this week, a new species of frog was found in New York City.
Interesting.
Exactly.
A reptile. New reptile.
An amphibian in the heart of New York City, in the sprawling metropolitan mass that is the NYC, the Big Apple, yo. Guess what? New species of animal. Didn't just show up.
Is it a cement frog?
It is a living frog. It is actually, what do we call this frog here? It is Rana Cafeldi. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Rana Cafeldi. Here's what it says. This is a story that I started seeing on the 4th.
Very cool.
Scientists have discovered a new species of leopard frog in the New York City metropolitan area and its surrounding coastal regions. My point is, ladies and gentlemen, how many people live in the Big Apple? A lot. And, this frog didn't just move in.
There's not that many trees compared to people. Never mind, just it's not a lot of places really for reptiles within city limits.
Yeah. Frog has been there a while. And you know what? Frog has been there all this time, and we are only now discovering this frog. That's my point, ladies and gentlemen. In right in front of our face, this little kind of really unremarkable amphibian is thriving in New York City like gangsta, and right under our nose. And you know what? We just didn't even know about it. People in the 30s, I guess, there was a herpetologist, Carl Caulfield, who I believe this frog has been named after. He thought that there might be a frog like this around, but we didn't know for sure. So this has only come down in the last 2 years that this frog exists. And the frog is right there in New York City. My point is, we can't count anything out right now. When it comes to, do extraterrestrials exist? What is the true and accurate story of humanity?
I didn't know there was an alternative manatee story.
You know what I mean? It's like, well, I'm just saying, it's like,
no, I'm with you. I love it. I love it.
We do not have all the facts, and every day we are discovering new things. And that's, this little frog to me, if anything, is a perfect mascot for, it's this right in front of our face. The frog was right there.
Did I hear you correctly, Michael, that you said this herpetologist suggested the idea of this frog in the 30s, like as in 80 years ago?
Here's what it says.
That is an elusive frog.
It is. Well, here's the deal. The frog kind of looks like other frogs. I mean, you see one frog, unless it's a larger frog, personally, I'm not crazy about frogs.
Frog.
Yeah. Frogs are one of those things I'm not really big into frogs. So I understand
catching frogs around your neck of the woods.
We caught a lot.
The fields.
Joe, we caught a lot and we shot a lot as well. I mean, we used to, Duck Dynasty style, bro. We actually didn't catch them like that. We shot them with BB guns or pellet guns. But I've eaten a lot of frog legs in my life.
Is that right? I've never had done that. No.
You know what? And the deal is,
is that the kind of the norm out in West Texas?
We have a lot of.
I'm not trying to be a smart ass about it.
No, I don't take it that way. Frog legs.
How did you begin with that, Michael?
Kind of considered a delicacy to a lot of people. It's weird. It's the old saying, it tastes like chicken or whatever. Yeah. It's a little bit like that, but I think it's just because you deep fry them in cornmeal, right?
Okay,
that's one approach, and it's a white meat. You'll eat their legs, and these are bullfrogs. So I mean, we have a lot of little stock tanks in West Texas, and at some point I've got to do a show on invasive species.
Are they like eating chickens?
They were actually imported to Arizona, of all places, at one point. Now they've got a huge bullfrog problem there. But bullfrogs and frogs in general are unusual animals, and they're in some cases they're very hardy, and in some cases they can be harbingers of ecological disasters because of the permeability of their skin. But in this particular case, getting back to this New York frog. New York State of Mind for this
frog.
It says here, field studies in 2012 had brought the first genetic evidence of a new frog species in the New York City region, where the similar leopard frog species Rana pipiens and Rana spinocephala live. As early as 1930s, the American herpetologist Carl F. Kaufhold suspected the presence of a third species. So this guy, very shrewdly, back in the 30s, he thought that there might be another frog out there, but for whatever reason,
80 years,
we didn't know for sure until just recently. And so this frog, like I say, the frog's always been there. It didn't just show up. Nope. And this is just a example of how we as humans, and while we're splitting atoms and creating great machines like CERN, we're still missing frogs.
It's wild, man. I can tell you, like, as a youngster in New York, I really can't tell you how many frogs I saw. Like, not many. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, there's just, I guess I'd have to be somewhere near a park, because it's just, the odds of them getting hit by a car are so high, Like, there's really not many places for frogs to be.
Well, weirdly enough, what they say here is this particular frog, it looks like other frogs, but its mating call was unusual. And I think that's one of the first things that finally people got tipped off to the fact that this other particular frog existed, because it looks like these. Well, here they call it. It had long remained undetected because it is a, quote, cryptic species, one whose appearance makes it almost indistinguishable from a closely related species. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the 21st century. I don't care if it looks like another frog. There's scientists that are supposed to have figured this out, right? But they didn't. So, got a new frog right there.
They found him 80 years later, hiding out in New York City.
Yeah. So, there you have it. And, just a inspiring story of, don't be too sure of yourself. There may be a cryptic frog lurking.
Right. You just didn't notice his mating call.
That's right. And somehow just missed out on that. And yeah.
I won't make that mistake now.
Yeah. Could easily happen. Now, if they find a large frog in South Central, then I'll be impressed.
Right. You see, I don't know much about the reptiles, but I thought frogs just kind of didn't like the sun. So I thought it was kind of not good for direct sun. Am I wrong by that?
Well, as long as they have water, and then here again, these are amphibians, so by their nature they like to be around some water. But the other thing is there's toads, and toads are similar to frogs, but toads, when there's a drought, when there's a drought, some toads will actually burrow into ground and kind of put themselves in. It's not, what's the word I'm looking for here? In a bit of a coma. What's the word? It's like they're able to shut down or slow down some of their body systems.
Oh, like a hibernation process?
Kind of, yes.
Okay, cool.
So that's why a lot of times after a rain, excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, I keep thinking I'm going to sneeze here in a moment.
Oh, let it go. Let it fly. It's moon, man. Everything's open tonight. There's
the minute
eating people, it's incredible.
Yeah, amphibians. The minute it comes, I'm gonna let it go. But I'm like, that feeling when you're you're just right on the very edge of it, and it never quite happens.
Yeah, sure do.
But anyway, so with toads, they can exist for periods of time, and some frogs as well. Even in drought-stricken areas. So I think you're right. Their skin is very.
Yeah, I just thought they had, but again, I don't know. I didn't grow up with them a lot. The animals I grew up around were humans.
Yes.
And unfortunately, there's still a lot of them around. They're the only animal that give me grief every day.
Well, there's a lot of those. So, but yeah, that's an inspiring story that I just wanted to bring up as an example before we get too full of ourselves. So another thing that I wanted to talk about, and I'd mentioned to you, well, actually you mentioned it to me, Ooh. And it was already on my mind, was this crash of the Virgin spaceship.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Now this is a tragic story because a person lost their life in this. And I'm going to try to pull it up right quick so I can make sure and get my facts here on this thing.
I'm very sad to, for the pilot's loss and his family, of course.
Yes.
I really am. It was just kind of a lot that week with the one rocket out of Virginia that blew up.
The Cygnus?
Yeah.
Yes. And what was the story on that exactly? How did that go down? That was that carrying a satellite?
Obviously, a few scattered things, but I believe the official story is it was carrying supplies, restocking supplies.
That's right.
Space station.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what was interesting is that when the rocket itself was aware that it was going to crash and no longer complete its mission, there was a self-detonate, which actually made everything explode. So if it happened somewhere else, not immediately over the launch pad, things wouldn't be easily recovered. And I just say, what's the big deal if you just got some food on there and stuff,
That's true.
But I'll tell you, they did have a contingency plan. They have another rocket getting ready to go. Not there, but just in case anything went wrong. We are talking about the space station. You can't just let them run out of food and stuff.
No,
they have a contingency plan. But apparently, the company that was hired, the private company to launch that rocket, did have a contingency plan, and they are preparing to launch a second rocket to complete that mission. But I just thought it was a very interesting feature. I was unaware we did those sorts of things on the private missions.
Well, I'll tell you. Here's the deal. Joe, the future that we thought that we were going to have as kids and the future that we have are two different things. I mean, just the fact that we're still talking about rockets that are using propellants in a fashion that's not that far from what we've been doing since the 50s or the 40s.
I didn't even know we were launching so many. Like this one blew up, and what was it? A day or two later, we just launched another one from Florida. A completely different one.
Well, here's the deal.
Shouldn't they just hold off a day or two? And I just had no idea we just fired so many off.
Well, that's kind of the interesting backstory to this whole question, because the company that fired that rocket that you're talking about is a company called Cygnus, which I don't know a great deal about. And you're right. The official story was that they were taking supplies to the ISS. And I believe that some other people were kind of saying that there were other strange things about that flight, that perhaps there was an experiment that Kickstarter had paid for. So I can't remember. I'll have to look into it.
I did hear alternative ideas as well. Yeah.
So, and I saw the footage where, literally it's barely off the launch pad, it seems like, when the thing blows up.
Right.
And then, later in the week, we've got the Virgin thing, which happened on Halloween, which here again, that's strange too. But then we also have Elon Musk's company, SpaceX. Now, they lost a rocket like a month or so ago, but they're actually launching a lot of rockets. And their whole idea is that, in the 21st century, a rocket should be reusable. Because if you think about the Saturn V's that took man to the moon, those were gigantic rockets and huge, huge machines and very expensive. And for the most part, completely disposable in that, we lost almost the entire craft every time we did it. And his whole thing is like, listen, a viable spacecraft program for the future is going to require that we be able to use these vehicles over and over. And then there's also the issue of that now, we're talking about Cygnus, we're talking about SpaceX. In a sense, we're talking a little bit about Virgin, but Virgin is more space tourism. But just the fact that private industry is now gotten into the rocketry game, and then these two things happen within the same week, a lot of people were immediately saying, gosh, well, this is really going to set Virgin back quite a bit. And apparently Virgin only had one craft.
Yeah.
And they were calling it the Spaceship Two. This was the second version or the second incarnation of the technology that they were creating for Virgin Galactic. Now, in full disclosure, I worked for Virgin and have very fond memories and great feelings towards that company and to Richard Branson, who I've had the pleasure of meeting a couple of times. And as a matter of fact, that company is very important to me, because if it had not been for that company, I would not have met my wife.
There we go.
And I've made a lot of very close friends as a result of having worked for Virgin. So I have very positive and warm feelings for Virgin. Now, that being said, I also have to be honest and say that I was concerned about this project. And I didn't, people, you might be thinking, Parker, yeah, you can say that after the fact. But no, this is true, and I'll tell you why. Having worked for Virgin and listen, a lot of big splashy companies and projects, it requires a leadership that is pioneering and charismatic and bold. And sometimes you will bite off more than you can chew. And sometimes you will.
It is fair to say the man is a risk taker.
Absolutely. And you know what? I love the guy.
Yeah.
But I will also say that, listen, I've opened stores for Virgin when, we were not ready. I mean, and, that's just, that didn't happen that infrequently. A lot of times we opened stores before they were really ready to be open. And when you're doing things that big and that splashy, sometimes
the deadline's more important than the project.
Yeah, and you said you were going to do it, and by God, you better do it. So that's fine when you're opening record stores or retail outlets or whatever. But when you're talking about spacecraft, technologies that will be transporting human beings around, and listen, I believe that Virgin Airlines has a very good safety record, and I believe that their trains do as well. I'm not in any way saying that they are a reckless company. I'm just saying that in my experience, we did kind of jump the gun on a few things, but hey, we were moving fast and we wanted to get those businesses open and people were waiting to come in and, you do what you got to do. But when it comes to Spaceship Two, my concern was that this is not a time to jump the gun. And I believe, I don't remember what year it was, but there's already been a few deaths related to the Virgin Galactic program already. I believe it was 2000.
I did not know that.
Yeah, but I don't remember if it was 2007 or 2000.
But I know he could also get away with it. I hate using that terminology, but the pilot, the deceased pilot, he actually wasn't a Virgin Galactic employee. He
was or was not?
He was not. He actually was through the firm that was doing the testing. So the test pilots actually, they were private contractors working for Virgin Galactic, but it wasn't he was working for Virgin Galactic, but he wasn't on Virgin Galactic's payroll.
Understood. And to be fair, listen, rocketry and space travel has always been a dangerous game.
Oh, no doubt.
So,
we know test pilot, that's a whole other job from a pilot for a specific reason,
Yeah, and so I'm not in any way trying to paint this as, hey, it's a safe gig. There is the chance for bodily harm, potentially death, if things go awry. So in this case, but I was concerned because I was like, wow, this is one thing where you don't want to jump the gun, and apparently there were issues. And I remember earlier in the year when they were basically saying, hey, you know what, we're gonna be launching this thing by the end of the year, come heck or high water. And so sure enough, they did. And the way this thing works, I believe that it drops off of another plane, and then it comes in two, and a rocket fires off. And initially, there was concern about the engine. I guess they were using a engine that was untested prior to this flight. And at first people were thinking perhaps that was the reason. And then the next story that has come out that they floated for the last couple of days is that the co-pilot had released some type of lever which controlled the rotating tail boom of the craft, which I believe was to help create drag. But the co-pilot unlocked it too early. And this information came about supposedly because there is a camera within the craft itself that was there to record the mission. And I guess they recovered that as that, there was plenty of spacecraft left on the ground. So they're claiming that as a result of that video, I believe they witnessed this.
I would imagine, quite a few videos. Being a test in this day and age, I'm sure they had quite a lot of testing materials, whether it be video or other equipment of the like. They were probably doing that mission trying to gather as much information as possible. So I would imagine they would have a bunch of info on that flight, whether we'll know about it or not. I'm not trying to start a conspiracy, but I mean, it is a private company at the end of the day.
Well, the thing that's,
it's not NASA. You know what I mean? It's still a private company.
It is a private company. And the thing that was a bit, I don't know if it's disappointing. It's just always makes me a little bit suspicious. And I'm not suspicious of anybody or the company. It's just whenever, and I remember when the Malaysian 370, it was at the flight number. Anyway, the one that disappeared, which they've never recovered.
The first one?
The first one. Yeah, exactly. The first one, and I think we even said this on the show, that in a lot of cases, when these planes, not a lot of cases, but in a few cases, they have laid the blame for these crashed or downed planes upon the crew.
Yeah.
Pilot, co-pilot. And I've always been wary of that. And, it's like, listen.
I know, especially here because, am I correct by saying the co-pilot who may or may not have made this pilot error is the one who's deceased? Is that correct?
That's correct. And
because it would be a lot more worse if the guy who was living made the mistake, right?
Well, yeah, it's bad either way. But no, you're right. And so I'm just pointing this out because
it's definitely bad either way. I'm sorry about that.
No. But I follow your point. So in a way, people could argue that it's better for Virgin Galactic that it might have been human error that caused this tragedy than if it was the result of some of their technology. But to me, I'm just saying that, you know what? Unless you're really sure, let's not put that out there just yet. But I guess they're trying to be as transparent as they can, given the situation. Now, I guess the NTSA is going to start looking into this, which is kind of uncharted territory for them because now we're talking about the first private company
I thought that was the whole breakdown of NASA, was to put it into private hands, and ultimately it was because they wouldn't have to answer to oversight committees and such. It's private contracts.
Well, listen, the conspiracy theorists are already saying that these two things happening in the same week, are in some way a way for the establishment to crack down on
something as simple as a release lever for a drag wing or drag tail, whatever it is. I mean, I would just like to think myself. I understand it's just a test, but something like that. There's a certain safety relay that says no, you're at the wrong altitude. That if you press that button, your plane's gonna break apart in midair.
You're exactly correct, and they're saying
it's just a test mission. But I would just like to also hear there's certain certain controls that overrule pilot error.
Well, no, you're right, and they say that there is some type of a message that happened shortly after that, asking them to correct it, and they did not.
Oh, okay.
So it's going to be interesting. I guess the FAA announced that they're going to continue to investigate it, and I think the NTSA is involved in this. In the meantime, that leaves Virgin without another spacecraft. But then I read
incredible to me.
What's that?
That's absolutely incredible that they were working with just one.
Yeah, well, apparently they have already, and I just read this today, they are rapidly trying to get the second one together so that they could potentially be ready to fly again in the summer.
Wow. See, I understand the space tourism aspect of what he's trying to do there, but I also like the sound of it when he says he wants to be able. It's not just the space tourism, but he wants to be able to take people on flights from New York to, let's say, Australia in an hour. That's right. An 18-hour flight. From New York over. So that's an hour. That's incredible.
Listen, some kind of suborbital.
That's remarkable.
Hyper jet should exist of some sort. And listen, I'm not going to knock space tourism. I have heard some people say, well, that's ridiculous. Isn't that just kind of a vain exercise?
Space. Like I get nervous on a regular commercial airline flight. Never mind going, let's say, 100,000 miles an hour or whatever it is.
Yeah.
When I'm going to New York to Australia. I mean, I'm going to be sweating really hard. Thank God it's only an hour flight.
Well, I hear
shaking.
You. And I'll be honest, if I had the money, I would probably sign up for it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'd be right there. Yeah.
Yeah, and
I mean, I'd jump off half the crazy buildings this guy did if I have his money.
yeah, I mean, listen, if I guess he's already taken money from a lot of celebrities, and I think that he's actually offered to refund them if they feel that he's not going to be able to deliver the flights in a period.
He said, I'm getting on there with my family.
Yeah.
So okay, man. Yeah. Go for it.
He said that. I think right now he is basically, he said the other day we fell short.
He's got face to cover as well. He's the face of a big enterprise,
right?
More so now than ever.
And I don't think that
to show confidence.
Sure, and I would seriously doubt that any of those people of means who have put down deposits to fly on that spacecraft are going to ask for their money back anytime soon.
Right, they're the type of people who really need it back either,
Yeah, they don't need it back, and I don't think that they would do that.
I think it was more for funding, right?
Yeah, I think it was funding, and listen, some of those people, like a Tom Hanks or something, I think they have a genuine and sincere interest in space as well.
I agree. Yeah.
So in this thing, what's strange about it? Well, not strange, but the reason I brought this up is that there are stories now where people are trying to say that, is this plus the Cygnus situation, is this some type of sign that things are going to become more difficult for private enterprise to be involved in rocketry space flights, and the fact that the NTSA and the FAA are getting involved in this. So some conspiracy theorists were already saying, are they trying to put the hammer down? Listen, I don't know that that's the case. I know that is the discussion that some people are making, but I will say this. Listen, you know what? In both cases, those, one of them blew up. The other one, we did have an accident in midair. So you know what? Investigations should occur. And
when we were when the space race began, and we were making the move to get to the moon, we lost quite a few people.
Yes, we did.
And quite a few high tech machines and everything of the sort that goes with it. And I'm just saying, we're obviously the goal is to lose nobody, but we also have to know. I mean, times were different, but at that time when the space age began, they were also doing their best as well. Their intentions were not to harm anyone,
right?
But they didn't give up. They didn't quit. They didn't say, "Let's scrap this project. We lost a few." They understood the main goal on the advancement as a human race as a whole. And so in hindsight, I'm glad no one gave up. I'm glad the push continued. And I'm hoping I'm going to feel that same way about all this in time as well.
I think that you will.
I hope so. Because I do believe in a lot of these people. I do believe that a lot of the top people involved in it, that when their heart and passion is in it and they're giving it everything that they have, that, when there's that much belief and energy and the encouragement's there and the mind is there, right? I mean, they have geniuses that I really think that something's good going to come out of it. I mean, maybe it might not be the hour flight from New York to Australia, but maybe it's half that time, and maybe it's more frequent, and maybe, who knows, maybe an ultimate plan comes out of it that, 40 years from now, air travel is just a little more simpler and faster and safer. I don't know. I'm hoping. And I'm not taking anything away from this gentleman or his family who perished. But again, we lost a lot of people when we began in this, and we had our best minds at the time on that. So I just think it's just a little too early, and I hope they don't pull the plug. I really hope they don't, because if anything, the competition through his other competitors, that usually breeds a little more genius anyway, or ingenuity. Something usually great comes out of it, yes, historically. So I'm hoping it all continues. I really do.
Progress and exploration have always been sometimes dicey. And, you know, if you were a oceanic explorer way back in the day, when you got on that ship, there was not the guarantee that you would return. Right. And, you know, so this has always been out there. And I'm sure that these pilots, you know, they were doing something that they loved. I can't imagine rising to that level of competency.
I'd love to hear how many test pilots the military loses that we just say they died in training. You know, well, we don't know.
Yeah, that's another story.
You know, for all I know, we lose one a week. We wouldn't know.
Right.
They just died in training.
Yeah. Since these are public companies, it's out there for everyone to see. It's not cloaked behind a black budget.
That's right.
So we'll see what happens. I know that, you know, listen, Richard Branson is one of the most famous men in the world. He has, you know, obviously access to incredible resources and connections with the highest levels of power. And he's an ambitious man. And I think he's a good guy as well. And so they will get back on that horse. They will ride. Those spacecraft will move. It's an interesting thing.
I hope so.
I have a lot of respect for people like him and Elon Musk, because really Elon Musk, honestly, I got it. I know I've gone on about this person in the past, but he's one of the few guys that, to me, in my vision, is delivering the future that we thought we were going to have. You know, I mean, just the other day he was saying, you know, really to make living on Mars feasible, we need 1 million people up there. You know, to make this.
That is just. It blows me away. He would even say that. You know, it just makes me think, what am I thinking that's so wrong that sounds ridiculous to me? When geniuses say things like that, you know.
Well, you know,
that's not who I would think would make a comment like that.
Well, listen, somebody has to say these things first and put somebody. And all I'm saying is that used to people thought people would think big and they would put out these ideas. And now I'm not saying that people don't think big, but it's just, I don't think that we hear, you know, in centuries ago, a man like Leonardo da Vinci would be renowned. And you would know that this man lived in your midst and he had genius ideas and would come up with ideas that you might think were just unbelievable, but you knew that he had the intellect to conceive it, and therefore you found it credible. And these days, you don't see so many people in the public space that are dreaming up these big ideas and then having the confidence and
I agree
to speak it.
Yeah.
If they have these ideas, they're keeping them very close to the chest. And so I don't know. To me, it's inspiring. Now, listen, you know, whether we get 1 million.
I love it. I love it. I mean, these are men with great ideas and the passion behind it and the confidence, you know, which is just as important. And I agree with you. These are rare folks these days.
Yes.
They're a very rare breed, because usually that breed also courts greed. You know,
agreed.
Usually someone like that ends up being a power broker or in stocks and this and that, but they do quite the opposite. It's almost the money's not the option. Money's just it's the necessity to fuel the idea. You know, so I admire it. There's not a lot of people like that these days. So I'm glad you pointed that out.
Yeah, I mean, that's one reason I've gone on about Elon Musk so much, but Richard Branson is the same way, and I understand when people try to knock this project and say, because I heard someone on the local news a day or two ago, and they were just saying, "Oh, but all that money and just, you know, it's not like it's space travel in a scientific or purpose-driven sense. It is really just tourism." But listen, inevitably, at some point, if we don't blow ourselves up or destroy the planet, we will develop these technologies. So let the dreamers dream, man. Let the flyers fly.
Our first commercial airline flights around were tourism, per se.
Yeah.
No one figured there would be a network set up for business travels.
And
bonus miles with credit cards. No,
and listen, you know what? I mean, sometimes things, they start out for the elite, but guess what? At one point, computers were gigantic machines that cost an incredible amount of money, and only large corporations or government organizations had them.
Tasks that were
now everybody's got them in their back pocket, and they might even bend.
Yeah. I mean, there's more technology in our cell phones than the first moon landing.
That's what they say.
That's what they tell me. That's what they tell me.
We will see what happens. If I had the money, I would probably bite on a ticket to fly Virgin Galactic.
That is amazing. What do you think about if someone you knew told you that they were going to be one of the people to go live on Mars?
That's a good question. Initially, I think I would probably be a little sad, just because I'm that kind of guy where right off the bat I would be thinking,
right. We know we're not going to see them anymore.
Right. I would think from the selfish point of view, like, gosh, well, are you sure you want to do that? I'm never going to see you again. But on the other hand, I also understand, I'm a Scorpio. I understand the importance of the quest to do something, or the belief and passion in an idea being more important than how practical something is.
Yeah.
How would you feel?
I would feel very uncomfortable in the sense that I feel like we really haven't done a good job with just biodomes here.
Agreed.
I mean, the first one I saw, I think they put Pauly Shore in it, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was a terrible movie I saw.
You're not going to believe this.
But honestly, I know we still battle with plants, and just recently, in the last few years, I believe there was a biodome where I think there was the one in New Mexico that they had a lot of CO2 issues. Like one of the sensors was a little awry, and they had to abandon the whole project. And I'm saying this is a controlled situation right here on Earth.
Yeah.
So I would be concerned, and it's just it's really truly a one-way ticket. It's like you're a one-way ticket. I'll catch a train, cab, but you have options. It's like no, it's a one-way ride.
And I think
in every sense of the way.
I think that we're farther off from that than even we thought a year or two ago, because immediately after Elon Musk made the comments about 1 million people, somebody else came up with a study which basically said, you know what, they've got 60 days. And the study was basically saying that there wasn't really a feasible way of getting enough resources.
Right, there's no food there.
Well, yeah, and the deal is you've got to get infrastructure created that will be able to maintain the fact that there's no air.
Right. You're going to have to live in a bubble.
Yeah, and you're going to have to be able to recreate a breathable atmosphere.
Oh my goodness!
That it just and listen, I don't know if this is true or not, and I don't know if anybody really knows at this point. You can create models based upon technology that we have, but until I don't know if anybody knows.
Let's just say it was here on Earth, on an island, and I don't know if they're going to have a dome on Mars, but let's say they just have suits to begin with, and you put me on this island and say, you're going to have to get some vegetation going here. You're going to have to do this, and I'm going to say I'm in this giant suit here. Like I'm not that versatile. There's nothing here, there's no plants. I'm just looking at rocks and sand. What am I supposed to do in this big suit? I mean, someone's got to build the dome.
And what if And listen, there's not going to be a huge amount of people initially sent. So what if you get sent up there with people you don't like?
Mm. Yeah.
And I would think that,
there's no court there.
There's no court. And whenever I think about the idea of living on Mars, at least the first generation, I think
is the gravity like the moon? Like if you were to hit someone really hard, can they like leave orbit? Like it actually might work out for you. Say, hey, you must have slipped. I think I fell. I think I raced for him, but we're on Mars.
Well, I mean that's a good. I don't know about the gravity,
See,
but
I'd have to look into it a little more, I suppose. Yeah.
Well, here's what I do know. Somebody's probably going to get wacky. Somebody is probably going to. Maybe I've seen too many science fiction movies, but somebody is not going to pan out well. Yeah. And you're going to have to watch for that guy or gal. So, we'll see how that goes down.
Someone's going to be stealing the rations of food.
Yeah. And somebody's maybe not going to like you or they're slowly just going to go insane.
Show of going to Mars. Yeah. It's brilliant.
So at some point in the future, I'll have to tell you my story. The people who created the Biosphere 2 that you were talking about.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, I worked for that company.
Is that a fact?
Yeah. And that's a whole story unto itself because I have to choose my words carefully.
Was that in New Mexico? Was I correct by saying?
It was New Mexico or Arizona. I can't remember. It still exists. And I actually tried to pitch a segment about it recently because now it's been taken over by a university. Okay. And you are right. The original 7 people that were put in there, they had to bail, I think, after like 90 days or 6 months or whatever, because the whole idea was that, they were going to recreate enough kind of ecospheres within this larger complex that would, mimic like oceans, deserts, forests, et cetera, and that they would be able to live in there for 2 years. Well, that didn't work out. They had some issues with having enough oxygen being created.
Yeah.
And the people that put it together were not they were artists. And it was funded by a Texas billionaire. And I worked for a portion of their group. They had when I say artists, I mean really they were artists. The way that I was involved with them, I worked for their record label. They were funded by Ed Bass, who was the youngest brother of 4 brothers, I believe, the Bass family. And they were billionaires primarily from oil. And they were based in Fort Worth, and they've done a lot of renovation of Fort Worth to this day. And in Fort Worth, they created a complex called Caravan of Dreams, which had a Buckminster Dome on top of a 3-story building. There was also a theater inside of it for live theater, and there was a jazz club. This was very avant-garde, and if you've ever heard of the avant-garde saxophone Ornette Coleman, he was on our label. And so these people really were artists, and the Biosphere came out of this group of artists that they were really trying to figure out a way to eventually terraform Mars.
Okay.
And it's good to dream big, but science was not on their side, and they didn't have a lot of science, I think, and that's why the thing did not pan out. And so sometime, I might have to do a show about that. But for me, it was a very interesting time to work for that company and kind of see all the things that.
Wow. Yeah. What an interesting time, man.
Yeah. So we'll have to go into that at some point. But I'm looking at my clock. I think we're about to put a bow on this thing. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been the 22nd episode of The Electric Pyramid here on Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And I thank you guys for listening. And Joe, I thank you for helming this thing for me, as usual.
My pleasure, my man.
I'm about to cash this thing out. What are you doing on your show this week?
Oh, coincidentally, I don't know if you saw it. I sent you a copy of the Leonardo da Vinci's notebooks.
You did, as a matter of fact. I have not opened it yet.
Yeah, no worries at all. I was on it because we're going to be getting into that a little bit on
Excellent.
a few sections of it. It kind of a little bit in correspondence with what we were saying, how there was so many, like apparently in Ancient Aliens, Leonardo da Vinci was painting aliens, and a bunch of all of these other things were taken from him. And I'm just going to go through a few examples on how some of these things we even attribute to him. They were in his notebooks because he was merely just taking notes on them. They were taught to him, and earlier examples of a lot of these things are still in existence. And it wasn't. I am saying the man was truly a genius, but a lot of the
Absolutely.
things that we say he invented and he came up with is not the case. They've existed for quite a long time, and he was merely just learning the ins and outs of them. And sometimes you have to sketch what you see, and it's not like modern schools today where you could take that class again. Sometimes a master of such and such passes through your town, and you have the opportunity to hear him speak and learn from him. You took and you wrote down every single thing you could, and you drew examples, and that's what he did. And there's similar examples of his contemporaries have similar notebooks with pretty much the same examples.
That makes sense, because a lot of times, if you had the opportunity to be around those teachers, you wrote it all down knowing that you wouldn't understand it at the time, but